Hello and welcome to Third Eye Thinkers. I'm your host, Michelle Welch.
Hello, I'm your host, Megan Benanti. Thank you so much for joining us today.
How are you doing?
I'm good. It's a week that is just starting and I'm already busy. So,
Well, that's a good thing, I guess.
yeah.
Right?
Always.
Yeah.
So,
It's a beautiful day here in Dallas,
Gorgeous. Yeah.
Texas.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm getting a little confused with the weather. I don't even know what to wake up, I don't follow the weather. So I just kind of wake up and go, oh, what's today like each day?
yep.
I'm not one of those people that looks ahead of time to see. So I was kind of surprised how warm it is.
Yeah. I look some of the time because right now I want to garden, which it's a little early for most people to garden, but I even like to have a nice winter garden. So I was looking for things. I bought a bunch of stuff that I could go ahead and put in early. So I bought those last week when it was still kind of icky. And then I just kind of put them in when the weather's good and I have time. So I spent this morning doing some yard work,
That's
which was
nice.
Yeah, very fulfilling for me. So.
Yes, I'm sure. Very grounding.
Yes,
Right.
always.
Well, I'm excited about our topic today because we are talking about tarot reversals or tarot reversals. It's so funny. I still cannot get that word.
I'm like, why did you
says
just say
that
tarot?
Tarot. Somebody said that this weekend.
No way.
Yeah.
Wow.
Somebody also said tarot, and I was
Yeah,
like,
I
okay,
hear
I'm not
that
trying
one
to not.
occasionally.
And then, how do you pronounce it? I literally, I'm so confused on how to say I'm just gonna start saying cards.
Well, most people don't. I say tarot or tarot.
I say tarot, but
I normally say tarot, but in Texas, I will let tarot fly as well. So, and I think most people are okay with either of those. But you're right. If it was going to be tarot, it would be spelled like carrot.
like it right, or parrot.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
It'd have two R's.
Doesn't parrot have two? I don't know. Matt, does parrot have two R's and two T's?
It has two R's. I don't
That's
believe
what
Yeah,
it is.
I
Yeah,
think
two
so.
R's.
So tarot
Yeah.
or
Tarot. I say tarot.
Tarot. Yeah, that sounds good to
So
me.
sorry to go off on that, but everybody asked me, and
Yeah.
I'm like, well, I don't know if I say it right. Quite frankly, I don't really care because I really just, no offense to anyone, but I'm going to say it the way that it resonates with me. And so I like to sound somewhat intelligent, but I'm from East Texas and I love it. And I'm proud of it. So if it comes out sounding really East Texas, then so be it. But even when we were in New York, I don't think I always said it the way they all said it. So
I remember you talking about that, but I always thought your pronunciation was right on.
Well,
and
good.
I don't think you need to worry. So
Good.
I never worry about it.
So, with that out of the way, we're
Yes.
going to talk about reversals today. So, reversals is something that Megan, you guys, I'll just tell you, everybody listening, she uses reversals a lot and in all of your readings, right?
Oh, yeah, all the time.
And so, tell us what reversals are.
So in a reading, you can have both direct and reversals. And a reversal is simply when the card is being read upside down. That can vary from reader to reader. For me, it's when the card faces away from me. But I have had other readers read the cards facing the querent. And then there's people that are going to read a card as a direct or a reverse meaning, even if they face them. So a lot of it's how you shuffle the deck. Michelle shuffles her deck so that all the cards face her. I shuffle them mixed matched, and so they come up in all different directions.
So I have a question about that.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're going, let's say somebody gets a deck and they've already, taken the deck out and cleared it and all those steps, but they're ready maybe to do a reading and it's their first time really with the deck. How would they get it, and they want to read reversals, how would they get it to where the cards are mismatched, like you just said?
Well,
What's
I
the best way?
literally take the deck and I split it in half and I turn them in different directions.
Oh, okay.
And so that way I know they're going to be flip-flopped in there. And then I'll keep rotating that deck so they continue to get more and more mismatched. So it's really about how you shuffle it. Sometimes I might even just spread it all out on the table and
Yeah, that's
Push
what is
them in
that
there.
called? Like a riffle, or I don't know what it's called. Something.
Oh, it has a name? I just call it sloppy.
Just call it. Mess them all up out there. But that makes sense because then you don't have. Because I will tell you that I've gotten some readings from people. Even one in New York. It wasn't it was one where we were practicing.
Right.
And this person happened to read reversals. All my cards except for one turned out reversed. And I really and truly, the whole time this person was reading for me, I was thinking, and I know it's law of attraction, so maybe they were all supposed to be reversed. But I was distracted the whole reading because I was fairly certain intuitively and just from watching this person that their cards had not been what you said. They had not been mixed matched at the beginning. So this person was using a fairly new deck.
Right.
And hadn't gone through that process. So then it kind of took the credibility of the reading away from me personally.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yep. And that is a hard thing too when you're reading for someone that's a professional. And I do have a lot of psychics that come to me for readings, and I like not knowing until the end. And usually professional psychics won't tell me until the end, which is also nice. Because, I'll get a little nervous,
Right.
because they're going to have their own interpretation of what I'm doing. And I really appreciate it when they sit back and just kind of let me do my magic and see how it goes.
Absolutely. And not that I wouldn't do that.
Oh, no, and I know you did.
But it was difficult for me because I really wanted this reading, and I didn't want to be resistant to every single card. It was a Celtic cross, so there were 10 cards, I guess. And actually this person had more than 10 cards. So it was like a modified and an extended version of a Celtic cross, and they were literally every card was
upside down.
It was reversed, and I think there was finally one, and I almost think the person turned it.
Okay.
And so it made me. That's the only time. But when you read for me, I never think twice about it.
Right.
When you are reading reversals, because it just doesn't. And that's probably was just my intuition getting in the way, going, okay, this, questioning the system a little bit. But I think it's a good thing to tell listeners how to literally mix your cards up.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point.
Because what you just explained, because otherwise it's like, oh, well, okay, they're all turned this way. That makes sense. They're all going to be reversed.
Right. So it is important with a new deck to really shuffle it up. I actually will when I get a new deck, I just start reading with it. I don't look through every card first. I just kind of see what happens. So when I start reading for clients, and that's always an interesting thing. And it used to be just terrifying for me when I was, in my kind of learning phases to try to do that. But now I look at it as a whole new adventure, because for me, part of that image of the deck they picked is going to feed into how I'm going to interpret that. So, so for me, when I'm shuffling, it's turning the cards towards each other and then shuffling them in together. And
that makes sense.
Yeah. Now, what gets interesting, though, is when you have, you're looking at a new deck, and sometimes based on the artist's interpretation, they might, for example, like a Four of Cups, you've got a man who's looking a little, and then there's the hand of God offering this cup, and then there's 3 other cups on the ground. And it's like, traditionally you think, okay, God's offering you something and it's not quite what you want. And then in reverse, it's like, hey, you're being offered the perfect thing. But I have another deck where that image is kind of reversed. And so then when I'm reading with that one and that one shows up in reverse, I really have to take the image itself into consideration. There's not that relying on, what would a Rider-Waite-Smith deck tell me.
Right. Well, and for me, I see it as layering. So I think when we teach tarot, Roger reads a lot of reversals. The way I read them is I just don't turn them reversed. I still read them to some extent reversed. You know that I love to research and I love to learn. It's an area I've been resistant to. And that's why I was so glad that you were willing to explain all of this to us on the show, because Roger does it, and I'm a little more resistant to learning and studying. We're going to go over some books in a little while, but I have books and I study everything else, and for some reason, the reversals I haven't. And I think one of the reasons was, and this was before I met you, but I would have these readings, and even if I'm not talking years ago, and when that card was turned a different way, even though I wasn't at that time a professional reader, and I'm talking like 20 years ago, if that card wasn't turned, reversed, once they were turned reversed, I'm just observant that way, and I was like, what? What's going on with that card? And so, especially if there was just one or two, because then it would
Right.
draw attention to that card. So for me, when I started reading, I just kept them all straight, just upright. Mm-hmm. And then I would go to the next layer of what are the cards around it. Then I go to the next layer of, and really for me, it's more intuition. I couldn't tell you, and I've studied them, they just haven't really stuck with me, which ones are the meaning, because it's reversed, is really an opposite meaning versus which one is just a lesser version of that meaning.
Right. And then some are, and a lot of times we think in positive, negative, and some are two forms of neutral.
Right.
For you, particularly, like I've seen Michelle read, she's still getting exactly the information she needs. And she doesn't need the card to be upside down to get that information. For me, it literally just makes it that much easier.
It is. It's very interesting. So how many, did you learn them from the beginning, or did you learn, because it seems like it's a little daunting for some people to learn the reversals right at the very beginning. Did you go in stages, or did you learn it all together?
I spent about a year studying direct and reversals. And then every time I'd read for someone, it ended up being kind of heavy. And so I just put it down. I was like, okay, I'm not doing this again. I'm done with cards. And then my neighbor goes, oh, somebody gave me this. I thought you might like it, not even knowing that I was into cards. And it was a beginner set. And in that set, I can't remember who the artist was, but it didn't have reversals. It was all direct. And I was like, oh, what a relief. This is so much easier. So I really worked with that. I didn't like the deck, but they were because the images were really simple. They weren't pretty enough for me, but it was a great deck to learn from. And so I spent another couple years working with that. And I don't think I got into reversals until I learned to really tap into reading intuitively. And the minute I hit the intuitive button got pushed, I was like, okay, we're just going for everything on this.
Well, that's interesting, because I feel like my reversals are intuitive also when I read them. But I wouldn't, if someone was to ask me, do you really technically read reversals? I couldn't tell them from a traditional scholastic viewpoint that I read reversals.
Right. Well, and it could be a little daunting if you get a reading and the whole thing is reversed and that could be a little stressful. Although, maybe it's the devil card that's reversed. I mean, you could get a lot of cards that you want to have in reverse.
So let's talk about that. So the devil card, for instance, traditionally that card to me may mean upright. It could mean things such as some form of bondage, some sort of deceit, potentially. Some chime in here. Things, maybe things that you feel you're in bondage to that you're not necessarily in bondage to. It could be addictions. Could, like I said, some sort of deception going on. Those are some of the traditional meanings.
Yeah. Materialism, outside, negative outside influences.
So then the devil reversed, what would that be?
Freedom from bondage. To me, that is letting go. It's, being free from a job maybe that was oppressive, or, feeling like you were held back, or getting out of a relationship that wasn't serving you anymore. So there are some cards you really do want to see upside down, but like death, which most people freak out over that word, death is positive when it's upright, but when it's in reverse, it's because it's about one door closing so another one can open, and bringing in change, letting go of something that, you need to move on from. But in reverse, it's feeling stuck, like you really need some change to happen. And the Tower, even more so, it's like, oh, I cannot get out of this soon enough. And that change just isn't there.
Right.
So
the Tower is the one that I think that is the most, if you do know that card, is when it comes up. Usually, and then they add the part that it's supposedly unexpected, something that's a lot of books and scholars will add that it's something unexpected coming, but yet here we are doing a reading. Right. So it's interesting that you bring that up, and that when that's reversed, that's even a little more daunting.
Right.
Because that card, I would say, that one is a little more of the DDT cards as I call them. That one's a little more daunting than the devil or death.
Yeah, and well, because visually it is, the name doesn't sound so bad, but if you're looking at it, you're like, it's two people jumping out of a burning building. You're like, ugh. But, it's interesting you say that it's kind of a surprise. I do think of it as having a lot of divine intervention with it, with the lightning bolt coming in. But I also think that when the tower shows up, it is change that has been coming for a long time. It really, really needs to happen.
And it may be that it's a surprise to you, but if you really, it's almost like that rock bottom sometimes for some people.
Yeah.
And so it's very needed. And so once you get through it, it's a wonderful thing.
Right.
But it's like you've had a lot of opportunities potentially to get through it another way. So it's not maybe really unexpected, but it's kind of
hard
forced
to go
upon
through.
you in a way. It comes up for me a lot of times when people are even self-sabotaging. Just really going down a road. I'll just say personally, even when I read personally, and I'm in a self-sabotaging pattern in my life. There have been several times in my life, and that card will come up a lot.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
and it'll come up reversed, and I'll be flipping that thing right back around.
Yeah.
Like, no reversals here.
No reversals here.
But so reversals aren't really a scary thing, is what Megan's, I believe you're trying to say. There's certain cards, I mean, they can mean that it's something better. It also can just mean a lesser version, right, of it?
Yes. One of my, like Three of Swords, to me, Three of Swords in reverse isn't actually positive. It's just kind of like to a lesser degree. It's less of a disappointment.
It's less, just a little minimized of what it was going to be. So it's still, that's a good thing.
Yeah, it's disappointing, but
it's better than upright.
Right. And Three of Swords is like a heart being pierced by three swords. So it's a tough card.
It's a tough card.
Yeah.
No way around it. So you brought, I know that Eden Gray was one of the book that you have is one of your.
She's definitely an influence. And I was just looking, I started rereading it yesterday, and it's been years, but one of those things that's kind of interesting is to go back and look at, the meanings of cards in books, because our meanings become so personal to us. And I'm like, oh, wow, that means that to her, because I get such a different vibe on it. And it is cool because then, it can broaden your vocabulary. But to me, it also says something, so personal about how, every reader has their own twist and influence, and how that can be really good for the person seeking the reader.
I think so too. I think that's why it's good sometimes to, I may refer someone to Megan, and Megan refers to me, that we have that we're reading for. It may be that they just need someone different that as a reader, because these, it doesn't mean that one's better or worse, or that somebody's definition is better or worse, but it's just the interpretation and the filter and what you're channeling through. I believe. I do believe it. We start with sort of, if you're starting with tarot, it's good to start with some basic meanings, but you can also get locked easily into those meanings.
Yes.
So it might be good just to go through those cards on your own, and what do you see? And you're really good at that. You're really good, you're very visual at looking at a card and saying, this is what I see, literally see in this card. And then you go into that deeper interpretation of what you see and the intuitive part of what you see. But you're very good at just describing, and I think some people are afraid to do that. They want to go straight to, this is the meaning that I've memorized, or, oh, I'm embarrassed to say that it may mean something different to me. But a lot of times it does mean, like, I'll get a card and I'll be like, I've never thought of the card in that way before.
Right.
I mean, we've done it on here before.
Yeah.
Where we're like, whoa, I've never seen that card in that way.
Yeah.
Because of what's coming through for us. And to me, that's where the beauty and the magic of cards come in. And I do believe there is some magic to tarot because of the universal consciousness of us having it for so long and having this meaning behind it for so long. As far as, there's another book, you guys, it's that Meg and I were talking about before we started. It's by Mary Greer, who's been on the show before. It's Mary K. Greer, I believe, right? And it's called Tarot Reversals. And I actually have it on my Kindle. And, I've picked it up several times thinking, okay, I'll get back to really trying to learn the scholastic definition of tarot reversals. But I don't make it that far into it. It's not because it's not a good book. It's just
Right.
I think I'm supposed to just do it intuitively.
Right.
But it's called the full name of it is called The Complete Book of Tarot Reversals, and it was published, I believe, in 2002. So that's something that if you guys are wanting to expand your reading for tarot reversals, that's a good place to start.
Yeah, and Mary makes her books very user friendly, so easy to
Very.
work with. And you know, just like reversals aren't for you, learning astrology signs is not for me. Now, I can pick up information on astrology, but when I sit down and try to study a book, I'm like, whoa, brain goes dead. So,
And isn't it interesting, though, because I do believe, I was thinking of it coming here, that I probably tend to err, I don't think that's the right word, but let's just say it, err a little bit on the side of being a scholastic. I love to study.
oh, yes.
And sometimes that can be a hindrance in a way when you're intuitive. And so it's interesting to me that I have never really wanted to learn reversals because I think it's keeping me in that intuitive space. And I love it that you said that it's intuitive to you.
Mm-hmm.
You don't just go by these are the definitions. You know,
Right.
you feel the card and you feel the message that's coming through. Also based on the imagery and the symbology coming through.
And the imagery is huge. So I've started working with the Starman Tarot, which is the David Bowie deck. And to read that, or to read a deck in reverse, so I'm so visual. And I was the kid who was the last one out of the museum. I would stand there and look at paintings for hours growing up. So I really am looking at the picture and the way the paint is on the page and, you know, what's running into something and, you know, does that bleed off the page into the next card? You know, if it doesn't have borders, that'll happen. Mm-hmm. And I even take into consideration the borders and what do the borders mean to me? Is it a heavy border? Is it a fine border? So all of that visually is going to play into how I read that card. And one of the great things about reversals is that you're going to get, you know, it's less about what the pictures, the actual image, because it looks distorted when you're looking at it upside down. Mm. So it really is more about the movement and the flow and what is that telling you.
Mm. I like the author and artist of the Starman Tarot. It's David DeAngelis. And he, have you joined the Starman group on Facebook?
No, you're my social media girl.
So he will respond. He is so friendly.
Oh, lovely.
He is the nicest guy. He's in the UK and he just talks to everybody about the cards and, you know, it's very approachable, which I really, really like because he has quite the story. That'll be for another day. We'll bring that deck on. It's a busy deck.
Oh, there's a lot for me, in that's it. Great.
Yeah, there's a lot in it. Like for me, I could probably, and I have done a whole reading, like, you know, maybe just a 15-minute reading, but on one card. Just that one card because I'm going, whoa, there's a lot there. The whole lot.
And I think that's actually a great study piece is to make yourself do a reading for 10 to 15 minutes on one card. I think that's a very powerful tool because then that forces you to look at both the direct and the reverse and connect with that automatically.
So I was thinking about a reversal, if we think about the Hangman, okay, he's interesting to me because it's Odin, basically, on a tree, they say. So he's hanging. So he's upside down, and I wish we had it to show, but we won't dig through and find it. But the Hangman, you know, and so he is right upside down anyway. So when you get him reversed, he's upright.
Right.
So tell us a little bit. I'm putting you on the spot, but tell us a little bit about where you would go with that.
There's an image of it. So the Hangman to me is interesting because it is, to me, he's the yogi. You know, doing the headstand, and it is about looking things from a different perspective. So for me, when he's in reverse, that's really bringing in that significance of sacrifice and compromising for other people to a point that you're not maybe taking care of your own needs. It can also be like, you know, blocked spiritual growth, or that you're thinking too much with your ego and not really connecting with the spirituality, because he has a halo around his head. So there's such significance with that as far as the spiritual growth and getting out of your physical body and thinking from your heart and connecting on that level.
I love that because I kind of drew on that to, I don't know timing because I can't see it, but can we go into our crystals? And
Oh, yeah. Bring your crystal out.
So, well, the interesting thing is that I kind of went on that for my reversals because, well, first of all, if you guys want to learn more about reversals, Megan's a great resource to learn about reversals, and I just want you to know that because I've learned a lot from you watching you read on reversals, because I just do it totally intuitively. Not saying you don't, but you are more educated on reversals than I am. And so the hangman, I just thought of looking at things from a different perspective. Mm-hmm. So the crystal that I chose today, and I don't have the actual crystal, but we have a picture of it. It's called Hiddenite. And it is a form of, and let me just go ahead and tell you why I chose it. I chose it because Hiddenite, when you put it under a black light, it's usually a light green. The most rare form of it is actually a colorless. It's colorless. Oh, wow. You would think, okay, well, that's not so exciting. But when you put it under a black light, which we do a lot at the store for fun, it turns a pale pink.
Oh, cool.
And so the name did not come from, it has a hidden meaning. I'm going to tell you in a second where it came from. It came from, but it kind of is that thing of a different perspective, because you put it under the black light, it's green, you put it under the black light, it's unexpected. It's a different color. So that's why I chose this crystal for today. Kind of like the hangman, looking at things from a different perspective. You just see it as one way, but if you hang upside down to gain enlightenment or go internally or externally, then you could look at something from a different angle, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so Hiddenite, the really cool thing, I'm going to try to keep it brief, but the history is really cool. So this guy, this dude, let's call him Smith. He was a miner. He was sent by Edison in 1879 to go look for platinum in North Carolina by Thomas Edison. Okay. So that was not very fruitful, but what he found was this new form of spodumene, which is this Hiddenite, okay? So spodumene is a whole different thing. It's a class of minerals. And so then it was kind of sent down to this guy who was a collector last name Hidden. And so he got a hold of it, and so it was named after him. But the even more interesting part is that within Hiddenite, and just hang with me, within Hiddenite, that group, so Hiddenite is usually green, okay? Mm-hmm. It's the green form of kunzite. And this guy named Kunz, at the age of 23, became the vice president of Tiffany and Company because of the discovery of this mineral right here, Hiddenite. So he became, at 23 years old.
Wow.
He was a self-taught mineralogist, and so his last name is Kunz. And so this, if you get any of these, and I brought them in before, in pink or purple or this green variety, it's called kunzite.
Wow.
After him.
Okay.
And the Hiddenite is the green version of kunzite, and that was named after the guy that was named Hidden.
Wow.
Isn't that interesting?
Wow. Yeah.
Totally and
interesting.
So I just thought that was fascinating. The reason he was so well known was not just because of this discovery of this gem quality spodumene, but also because he taught Tiffany and Company into having other minerals, not just diamonds.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
I love that. Well, and I would have just thought the name Hiddenite because it's got a hidden color to it when you put it in the black light. Wow. Fabulous.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
and the story of him is just so fascinating to me with Tiffany and Company. And think about it, 23 years old.
Wow. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, and that totally ties into my plant. So because I chose my plant for reversals kind of based on the same idea. So I brought in the calla lily today, and the meaning of calla lily is magnificent beauty, and I thought, well, it really is, and it helps us to remind us of our truth and our oneness, which is really significant. So it breaks through the illusion of separation. And so we're looking at direct and reversals, and we're considering that in the idea of duality. But, there is an aspect of that maybe that's an illusion, that really we're focusing all on oneness. And so, and in the way Michelle reads her cards, that's that oneness. So, and, if I'm reading it, whether it's direct or reverse, it's still one card. So that's why I kind of picked the calla lily. It's interesting, too, because the calla lily only has one petal, and it makes the whole flower. And so there's that oneness in the flower itself. It's also good if you need to create peace in an environment. And, we think about calla lilies often at funerals, and the Easter lily, which of course was about the death and the rebirth of Christ. So, we'll be seeing a lot of them at this time of year as we begin to approach Easter time and that kind of thing. But, yeah, that was kind of cool.
It's a beautiful flower.
Yeah, they're really neat. I had a friend give me some last week, so I've got some in my office right now, which was really nice. So.
Right. I love that whole concept of the one. So it's one petal, the whole thing?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's beautiful.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah.
So, Matt, do we have time for reading, or are we out?
We could probably do one really quickly.
Okay.
We're about up on it, but I think we have time.
All right. You want to shuffle that real quick, Michelle?
Yes, I will.
And, of course, we will be reading them direct or reverse, however they pop up. Okay, so if you're new to the show, one of the things we do is we pick a couple charms, and today we have a fencing mask, and we have a director's chair, and we've had that director's chair several times. So you pick either the fencing mask or the director's chair, and then that reading will apply to you. And it doesn't matter if you're listening to the show today or 3 years from now; it will still apply to you at that moment. So.
Very well said. Are we doing one card for each due to time
yeah,
or two?
let's see.
Okay.
That's fine.
Or do you want to do two?
It doesn't matter to me.
Okay.
I'm fine either way. Okay. So, and we don't have reversals. And we have both direct, but interesting, both cards are major arcanas. So with the mask, we have the Hermit.
What, do you want me to go?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So for this, if you pick the mask, I think this is perfect, a perfect example of a time for you to go within to gain some knowledge. It doesn't mean you have to literally this mask is more of a protective mask, I believe. So to me, it's a time for you to go in. You're seeking something that you want to gain more knowledge on. And I don't mean book knowledge, what we were talking about earlier. I'm talking inner knowing and enlightenment, sort of like we were talking about with the hangman. This enlightenment is in this little lantern here and up in the top of his wand and of the hermit. I do believe that when you do that, a form of protection is needed. We've had shows about protection before on our podcast. If you'll go back and listen to some of our early podcasts about protection, I feel like whoever chose this one, it's a time for you, and you may be questioned about what you're seeking enlightenment on, where you're going in life right now, what it is that you're gleaning, where you maybe want to go spiritually, and you may come under a bit of attack from some people, and that's where, and by attack, I mean, they don't necessarily agree with you. So, and there's a lot of that going on right now. A lot of people just, reassessing their belief system. And so that's what I'm getting. Just know that you are protected. Call upon protection, whatever that is for you, whether it's Archangel Michael, whether you put a bubble of protection. Again, you can go back and listen to that podcast. But make sure during this time you're very protected, because I do feel like that there are some that will come at you a little bit about where you're going with your next step in your spiritual journey.
Yep, absolutely. And what I'm getting with it too just is the idea, I feel like you're forging ahead, and yet it's almost like you're invisible right now, or you don't want to be seen. It's like you're really kind of doing this journey on your own, and it's like you're not wanting to reach out to others for help. And if you did, you wouldn't know how to do it. And so maybe there's a little bit of, it's not necessarily that you actually need to communicate. It's just more that it's feeling like you're wanting to be a little in recluse internally. Because to me, that mask is very much hiding your ability to speak, to hear. But there is this sense that I've got to keep pushing forward no matter what. And so sometimes we do have to kind of disconnect from others. So maybe it's unplugging a little bit, or not picking up the phone just so you can get the job done. So,
yeah.
Okay. So we've got the Lovers and the Director's Chair.
What's interesting for me, for the Lovers, I read this differently. This card is one that is very dependent for me on the cards around it. Many people read this card as straight up just about love. I see it very much more about temptation. And about choices and choices you make for the love that you want in your life. So it doesn't always have to be a negative connotation of temptation or a negative connotation of what you want in your life. I guess temptation typically has a negative connotation. But if you chose this director's chair, to me, it's saying you are in charge of your life. You have free will. You may have some things that you're very people or things that you are sincerely passionate about right now that you're really having to make those choices yourself. And I want to remind you, as the director of your life, that you do have the free will to make those choices. There will be consequences to those choices. And I feel like it's not always negative, but, and I'm not always speaking, I say it straight out, I'm not always speaking of an affair or things like that in love, but it could be something you're going through or something where you're thinking about something you're precariously close to a choice that may have some severe ramifications, positive or negative, in your life. And just remember that you're the director of that, for work, for everything.
Mm-hmm. Wow. And it's interesting for me looking at this because I feel like the Hermit is kind of about aloneness. And then I've got the Lovers here in this director chair. And I'm really looking at, you've got this, you've got to work with others right now. And that's going to help you. I got a very different message than Michelle on this.
Fine.
Yeah. It's that there's a leadership position, whether that's at work or in the home, but you need to get some help from other people in this situation. You don't feel like you have to do it alone. And in fact, you will do it more effectively with a team. Now, there might be somebody in that who feels either forced to do it or doesn't want to do it, and they might not be a good fit for this particular project. And somehow you might be kind of stuck with that person, but I feel like they're not as effective. So really count on your other team members to pick up the slack a little bit. And again, as Michelle was saying, I do feel like you get to make a lot of the choices on this, but I really would consider some of what the other people want as well, because I think that is going to help make the project or the situation more effective right now.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I believe, tell me if I'm correct, that I just read that Lover's card as somewhat of a reversal.
You totally did. Yeah, I was like, oh, she's reading it
there
in
you
reverse.
go.
There.
So yeah, so that's an example of how that can happen. But great reading. Megan.
Yeah, and I do think so with these readings, like even though Michelle and I got very different readings on that Lover's card with the director's chair, that's still going to connect for someone.
Oh, absolutely.
So we are trying to tap into that communal consciousness there. So
this was good.
Yeah, very cool.
And again, if you have any more questions about reversals, you can. Megan, how do they get a hold of you?
TarotDallas.com.
Yeah, so she's very good with the reversals. We actually are having a class at some point coming up. We've been doing going through tarot classes. We've done Tarot 101, and Roger does our reversals when he does our classes. So
That's awesome.
so he's read from as long as I know with reversals. So this was interesting.
Yeah. Well, thank you all so much for listening today. We really appreciate it. If you enjoyed the show, please give us a 5-star review, and don't forget to subscribe. We're on all the channels and on YouTube, or podcast channels and on YouTube. And keep Third Eye thinking.
RNCN, the digital destination for premium talk radio.